Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to day 22 of this vlog. The name of today's episode, I'm thinking, will most likely be The Plan. And the idea being that, hey, we are a few weeks into this vlog project, and it's been an interesting deal so far. It's been an interesting thing to work activity so far, and I've been enjoying it and plan to continue doing it for some time to continue to see what materializes out of it, and yeah, carry on and see what happens. And I think the most interesting part of this whole notion between this and I'd say the two kind of main areas that I've been spending some time on putting some of my thoughts and my hot takes on different subjects out into the world are on here in kind of a more longer form, in a longer format, given the way that YouTube is, you can upload 10, 20, 30, 40-minute videos as opposed to TikTok, which I've been going pretty ham on, which is a much shorter snippets, 15-second snippets, 15, 60-second, or up to 3 minutes. And so what's awesome about that platform, because it's a little more organic right now, is being able to just put up a bunch of thoughts and it'll kind of get all over that app and get feedback from different people. So that's been super cool. However, the limiting factor is the format, and even with either people I agree with or people who are challenging the thoughts and ideas that I'm putting out there, it's a limited format to be able to, whether you respond with a follow-up video or in the comment section, it's overall pretty limited, which is okay. But with some of these ideas and some of these concepts, they maybe require a little bit longer of a format to be able to flesh out some of the details. And so I guess I bring all this up because as this effort has gone further along, I've started to keep notes on subjects and topics that I want to cover. And even this evening, after spending some time looking into a couple of the topics that that wanted to put out there, if I think of putting them out on TikTok, it's like, well, how do I condense down these different lines of thinking into a 15 or 60-second clip? Because I'm just kind of a long-winded guy. I'm just kind of maybe over just sometimes can take what would otherwise be a simple or brief subject and be a little bit long-winded about it and maybe use more words that are necessary. So that being said, I figured I would just share some of the topics that I want to cover coming up, as well as some stuff I've started looking into, share that with you guys so that the plan, some different things I'm hoping to cover. And if you happen to be, what would be the word, well versed in any of the subjects I mentioned, by all means, please chime in and, hey, if given that subject, you may want to read this article or this pamphlet or this book or watch this video. I'm super open-minded to listening and learning from different resources, so any and all of that is welcome. So that being said, the random list I've put together of different things that I want to cover, and I'm sure this will grow and change and whatnot over time, is here we go. Here's just a list of some things that I want to touch on. So the first one that made it onto the paper was, have any government programs ever closed? Right? So a lot of the things I've been posting here and on TikTok have been around the idea of these massive government programs that are extremely wasteful, so much fraud, waste, and abuse, it makes your head spin. Well, just kind of posing the question, has there ever been one that started and then people have recognized, okay, we're not getting a lot of value out of this, let's just close it down, like the post office, right? Hey, there's plenty of other institutions that could get that service done. Why do we still have a post office? Why not just shut it down? It loses it's has lost tens of billions of dollars or whatever it is over the last decade. So things like that. Oh, and that leads right into the next topic, which was a case study on the post office. So I think it might be kind of interesting because I think that's a great example for people when you start bashing government programs as a whole. Like if I were to say, hey, expecting the government to administer education is an insane idea. A great analogy is like, hey, these are the same people that run the post office. These are the same employees, the same administrators, like the same incentives for the post office to do a good job is the same incentives for them to do anything else well. And it does seem absurd on its face because when you think of the post office, you're definitely not thinking of a highly efficient, highly and just a well-oiled machine that's delivering a good service. That's definitely not what we think about, right? You think of Amazon and you do think of a well-oiled machine, right? That's in the private market. That's a similar-ish service, right? It's people who are moving things and packages, etc. I'm taking Amazon every day of the week. And so, yeah, so that being said, I think it might be interesting to do a deep dive into the post office to then be able to have that as like a case study in the shortcomings of government agencies in their ability to provide a service. So that's another one. This one I actually did do some looking into tonight and shared on TikTok, which was the tax code effect on healthcare. So that one was a pretty interesting one because I've been kind of aware of it mainly through like Peter Schiff and some other sources that, hey, there is an effect, and I had kind of just taken their word for it and never bothered to look it up. Well, and again, it being on this list, I started looking into it, and it turns out, maybe I'll go a deeper dive into it, but the takeaway here after just a brief dive into the subject is that employee sponsored health insurance, or ESI for short, or excuse me, not employee sponsored health insurance, employee sponsored insurance, or ESI, is something that started back around the World War II era. And again, having only briefly looked into this, my understanding is a little bit fuzzy, but the general notion being that, hey, around that time, there was a labor shortage. And in order to, I guess, stop some of the bad effects of I'm not even going to get into why, but essentially the President Roosevelt put wage and price controls on the U.S. economy. And so then around that time, employers had to get creative in ways to attract employees or retain employees at their business. And if there's a wage control on the formal compensation that you're giving an employee, hey, you can't go above a certain amount, well, then you have to get creative on ways to compensate people, in ways to again recruit and retain good people. And so what a lot of employers started doing is offering fringe benefits that weren't technically part of their income to attract people. And one of those fringe benefits was healthcare or health insurance. And this coincided, so it sounds like shortly thereafter, this became such a common practice that the IRS deemed it as a non-taxable part of your income. So it wasn't subject to the income tax. So now you have a huge incentive for employers to compensate their employees, or for employees to accept compensation in the form of healthcare, because there's this massive tax benefit of doing so. So now you have this huge incentive to drive resources towards the healthcare industry, which in that case does what, one article I was looking at, they said one of the issues is it causes a lot of overconsumption, right? So if you were just compensated in normal dollars and your normal compensation, you would use discretion on where to spend that money. Some of it may go to health insurance or health care, but some of it may go to other needs or luxuries or wants or anything that you would spend your normal income on. But when you designate a portion of it as only being able to go towards one industry, that's going to drive up the prices and the cost of that particular product or service, right? So that has coincided with a massive spike in the cost of healthcare. So that was just a follow up to some of the other aspects of why the healthcare costs have gone up over time. And so again, this is something I've heard guys like Peter Schiff and other people who are smarter than me discuss, and I figured I'd do a little bit of a look into it. I still think, it's probably a subject I'll have to do a deeper dive into. But and that being said, it seems like the way to solve this problem, again, efforts to rein the costs of healthcare in, would be to do as much as we can to separate. Well, let me say this. I think the way I would sum it up would be to keep every tax benefit possible, to keep the government's hands off of our income, but don't necessarily make it a special designation for healthcare, right? So whatever tax benefit people are currently getting, let's keep that, but just don't make it specific to healthcare. Make it part of your normal income so that you can use your own discretion on where you want to spend that money. So that's all I'll say about that without doing too deep of a dive into it. Another topic I hope to cover are agricultural subsidies. So this is one I've been very interested in for a while, but just haven't taken the time to look into, is the idea of what regulations and subsidies and distortions is our federal and I guess maybe state governments putting on the agricultural industry. It's one of those ones that, hey, it's maybe been on autopilot for generations now, and we kind of don't really think about the agricultural industry, or at least those of us just in cities that can show up to a grocery store and benefit from the food that's on the shelves. But to me, this is something where I've assumed there's a lot of pain points and friction points and stagnation in that industry caused by the government, but I don't know for a fact yet. So I need to look into this one and learn a little bit more about it to be able to have some relevant commentary on the matter. Another topic to discuss would just be the idea of central planning, and define that term and talk about the pitfalls of that idea. Another one I've written down is how Soviet countries created free markets. So this one is a very interesting topic that I stumbled upon a while back, which was around the time that the Soviet Union fell and many of these countries, I guess, gained some sense of independence or sovereignty. Many of them decided to liberalize and change their economies from socialized economies to free markets. And I've watched a video or some commentary on the different methods that they used to liberalize their economy. And so I'm very interested in that topic and would think it'd be awesome to do a deep dive into that and share whatever I find with you guys. So that's a good one. Another one I have in here are examples of regulatory capture. That was something I talked about in the reaction to the Joe Rogan episode with Brett Weinstein. So finding examples of that, so I'm able to speak to it. Another topic I have on here is Austrian economics. So that's the school of economics that guys like Peter Schiff and others subscribe to and promote that ideology. So I feel like it will be worth me studying and understanding what, by definition, what is this? What are the theories within this school of thought, and yeah, so I'm able to kind of find what scene, yeah, so I can learn about it. And then I have a category, ongoing list here of definitions that I would like to cover, because again, I think a lot of terms get thrown around, and people start speaking past each other, and in these types of topics and debates and whatnot. And so one way to slow it down and make sure we're all on the same page is starting to define these different topics and or kind of words, and go, okay, are we all thinking about it the same way? Do we all mean the same thing? Because if we don't, then we're going to keep talking past each other. So words that I want to spend time defining are communism, socialism, fascism, capitalism, freedom, free market, laissez-faire, and collectivism versus individualism. And I'm sure that list will grow. So that's just another thing that I would like to cover. Another one I'd like to do a deep dive into is the ways that the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission, hurts small investors. So this is something I've heard Peter Schiff talk about a fair amount, and something that seems self-evident. It's funny because a lot of these topics, just from my vantage point, seem self-evident, in that the way he talks about certain regulations really are only hurting the small investors and the small people. It creates a barrier for entry to get into the market to invest, or for people to manage your money, because it makes it so costly to manage your money. A lot of people go, hey, it's not even worth it. So that being said, that's one I'd like to cover. And then the last one I have on this initial list is going to be a deep dive into the idea of legalizing all drugs. So this is, I think, something I have marinated on for a while, is this idea that to me it seems arbitrary where we have allowed, or where the government has decided to stick their noses in our lives and decide what we can and cannot do. And regardless of whether or not you think drugs, certain substances, are bad for you or for others, the real matter of principle is whether or not you think that the government has a place to step between you and yourself and prevent you from putting something in your own body. And so that's something that the more and more I've thought about it, and the little tidbits I've picked up here and there, have just confirmed the idea that, as a matter of principle, it's not something that I support in any way, shape, or form. And so, yeah, that's something I should probably do a deep dive on. And, now that I look at this list, actually, I'm kind of excited, because that's another dozen or 20 something videos that I can spend an afternoon kind of doing a small deep dive into that particular subject, and then share with you guys what I find. So that should keep me busy here for at least the next couple of weeks. And all that being said, I appreciate anyone who's tuned in. This episode, as I mentioned at the beginning, is going to be called The Plan. So just laying out the roadmap for the next handful of subjects I hope to cover. And yeah, all that being said, I appreciate anyone who's tuned in. Like I mentioned in my last video, the tribe has grown by another subscriber. And so, again, I appreciate any and all support and the feedback that I'm starting to get from people. So, yeah, I will call that good for tonight, and I will see you guys all tomorrow. So, hey, it's Sunday night over here. It was a beautiful weekend. It was a productive weekend on my end. Got some good things done, and I'm looking forward to a productive week. And I hope you all are as well. So have a good evening, get some rest, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Later.